Welcome back, everyone. Welcome to week 6. This week, our lecture is about infographic or visual aids. Basically, you're going to learn how you need to organize your slides for your research report, which is the second component of your final research project. You need to prepare the slides, and in this session, you're going to learn what kind of graphics or what kind of visual aids you need to prepare in order to have better presentations. There are some reading assignments you need to complete in this week. This class and this lecture will be done asynchronously. Basically, you don't need to attend the lecture. You simply need to watch this recorded video, which will be located and posted in the documents and lecture folder today, which is Monday. Your session is on Wednesday afternoon. Please watch this video and pause as you wish to review and learn the components. There are some reading passages that you must complete for this week: visual aids, the slide deck reports, 4 tips and 1 tool that will help you perfect your slide design. It is specifically important when you click on these links, you need to read the components, take notes in details, as I keep reminding you that this session and this technical writing course is designed for you to improve your communication analysis within the business setting. There are some videos that you can also watch in order to learn how infographic it is important to be added and embedded within your final presentations and final projects. After completing the reading components on your announcement page, you need to watch the recorded modular lesson that we are having it right now. Enjoy the lecture.
I'm sure you've guessed it, when your audience will see the infographic. If you're trying to produce evergreen content, which is content that when creating any form of communication, whether that be B2B or B2C, there are a few key things that you need to know before you get started. And this is especially true when creating visual content like an infographic. You need to know the 5 W's. Like what? What are you trying to accomplish? What do you hope that your infographic will achieve? Or who? Who is your target audience? And who are your stakeholders that are going to approve the final infographic before it's published for the world to see? Why? Why are you creating this infographic in the first place? Why should it matter to your target audience? And why is the topic or service being promoted in the infographic important to that target audience? Where will your audience find the infographic? Will it be shared on social media, on an end website, at a conference, in multiple locations, etc.? And when? When will the infographic be released? And when does it need to be completed to ensure that release date? You should never start a project without first defining these 5 W's, since they're going to also help ensure that an infographic is the right solution for your needs in the first place. For example, what if I came to you with the following? The what? I need to grow my customer base by 10%. The who? I'm trying to connect with young millennial home buyers about a cool new program that makes it easier for them to buy a home. Why? Well, the program helps them compete in the market by providing cash up front to make all cash offers on a home in the most competitive markets. We lend them cash, then we turn around and provide a mortgage to the home buyer at current interest rates. Where? Well, we know that the millennials we want to target are active on Instagram and YouTube primarily. And when? We want to get in front of them before the summer buying season hits. Now, what if I had started that whole entire thing with, I want an infographic that talks about how hard it is for millennials to buy a home in today's climate. While this seems to make sense, the minute you start to think about the where, it starts to kind of unravel. You see, an infographic won't actually succeed that well on Instagram and YouTube, but a motion graphic will. This is why you should never start with the certainty that you're going to be designing an infographic from the beginning. Instead, make sure that your choices are always informed by the 5 W's, including understanding whether an infographic will help you achieve them or not. In the 5 lessons that follow, we're going to go through all 5 W's in far more detail, with examples that will actually help you see these 5 W's in action. After that, we're going to develop a creative brief together that considers how the 5 W's apply to the first infographic I ever designed, which is the one that we'll be redesigning together by the end of this course. With all content that you create, you should always have an established goal or a set of complementary goals identified at the beginning. This is going to inform the decisions that you make throughout the entire design process. Now, different goals lend themselves to different types of content, with infographics accomplishing a number of important tasks, but not always the right solution for the goals at hand. For example, when the modern infographic first sprung to popularity in 2009, it was a tool wielded primarily by content marketers looking to produce link-worthy content. Marketers would release infographics on a variety of hot-button issues with the goal of other online publications picking up the infographic and linking back to the original website that produced the infographic initially. By increasing links back to the website, the site would have more potential to rank higher in Google's search results. So they were a link building play. But over the years, infographics have been the go-to solution for a number of targeted goals. And these can be broken into a few key buckets. The first being on-site content marketing. This is the production of content within a website to educate and engage those who visit the site with the goal of converting them into a customer or a loyal follower. Off-site content marketing. This is the production of content to live on channels outside of a branded website. For example, LinkedIn and Facebook might be considered social channels. Medium, Forbes, Inc., etc., they would be considered publication channels. These are other venues online where a brand's audience might be. By posting content to these channels, the goal is often to engage target audiences to either get them to participate with the brand on that social channel, such as following a brand's Facebook page, liking or sharing posts, or to get them to leave that channel and visit the brand's website to take action, such as signing up for an email list, making a purchase, or setting up a meeting. And then there's internal communications. More and more these days, we are seeing infographics used for internal communications as well. For example, an HR rep might decide to communicate a company-wide policy or a change to the team with an infographic. Maybe a well-known coffee company, who I can't name publicly, needed our team at Killer to create quick reference infographics to train their baristas on how to make new drinks, or on closing procedures, or on how to deal with conflict resolution. Or maybe a company wants to create a statement wall in their office, showcasing their mission, vision, and values for all employees to see. These are just some examples of the myriad goals that infographics accomplish, but not all goals can be achieved by an infographic. For example, if you want to capture your audience the moment they land on your website, a motion graphic would drive far more success than an infographic. If you want to grow followers on social media, You'll likely see more success with memes and animated GIFs than you would by posting a traditional infographic on a regular basis. This is why it's so important to define your goals up front. Your goals will help you determine whether or not an infographic is the right solution, and they will also inform the remaining 4 W's. One thing to note before I conclude this lesson: try to stick to one goal for each infographic that you produce. If you must, you can stretch to 2 goals, but often trying to accomplish too much at once will lead to subpar results. For example, if you wanted to drive traffic to your website and grow social followers at the same time, you'd have a hard time achieving both goals with equal success and one infographic. A single infographic can't easily encourage people to both become a social follower while also clicking through to your website. Instead, you want to have one clear request for action in your infographic. The minute you ask a viewer to do more than one thing is the minute they're going to actually start questioning the validity of your content. We trust brands to deliver great content to us without asking for a lot in return. When that great content comes at too high of a price, and yes, asking your audience to do more than one thing is too high of a price, we actually begin to feel taken advantage of, and we look at the infographic with skepticism. Today's audiences lack trust in content. Don't risk losing their loyalty by pushing them out of their comfort zone and trying to force more than one goal with your infographics. How often have you heard your clients or stakeholders say this? Our audience is everyone. Now, if you haven't heard that before, then you have some amazing clients that understand and value targeted advertising. And you better be sure to keep them happy. But if you're like most of us, this is a very common misconception that most infographic stakeholders like to start with. Of course, 91% of audiences today prefer visual content as their primary, secondary, and tertiary form of information delivery from the brands that are vying for their attention. This means that leading with an infographic does provide brands with the potential of casting a very wide and diverse net. But infographics are just one of myriad forms of visual content that audiences crave. Some prefer motion graphics above all, others prefer something more interactive, and others still prefer ebooks or other less traditional types of visual content. This means that simply starting with an infographic will actually already restrict your audience. Next, you simply can't discount the very large weight that personalization plays on today's content experiences. Audiences respond better to infographics that speak directly to them. I give thorough examples of this in my course, 20 Rules for Visual Communication, Rule 4, Your Audience is Everything. I highly suggest that you check out the infographic examples in that lesson, but I also don't want to leave you hanging. So here's a fresh set of examples that I'm going to use to show you what I mean. In the early years of Killer, we produced a series of what I like to call versus style infographics, where we pinned 2 personas against each other. The first infographic was Geek versus Nerd. The next in the series was Geek versus Hipster. And another one later down the line was Silicon Valley versus Seattle Geek. All 3 were immensely successful because we considered the target audience when developing the narratives, the illustration style, and more. For example, Geek versus Nerd was created for a school that was looking to connect with prospective IT students through humor. At the time, there was a heated debate online about the differences between geeks and nerds, with those considered geeks taking a lot of pride in the term, so long as they weren't called a nerd. We found that this was an especially heated debate among those interested in more technical careers, which meant that we could actually catch their attention more readily with the subject matter. We catered to them by juxtaposing the two personas and using visual elements to clearly showcase the geek as being the cooler of the two. Now, following the launch of Geek versus Nerd, we learned that self-proclaimed hipsters were deeply offended by the infographic, believing that the stereotypical definitions of a geek were actually too similar to what they viewed themselves to be as proud hipsters. Guys, I am not kidding you. We actually had people sending hate mail. Hipsters were greatly offended. So knowing that we had this second audience that we had captured the attention of, we decided, let's take advantage of this and capitalize on it. If we could cater to that audience as well, we knew that we could drive even more success for our client through the social shares that audience was sure to provide. So our solution was to provide this follow-up infographic to better clarify the situation at hand. And when we produced Seattle Geek versus Silicon Valley Geek, we updated the illustration style to look like an 8-bit video game intentionally. We knew that we were going after a very niche audience with a rich history in late 80s, early 90s gaming. And we knew that we wanted to choose an illustration style that would capture their attention faster. Throughout this piece, a variety of inside jokes are referenced that only those ingrained in Seattle and Silicon Valley tech scenes would truly understand. This made the piece all that more successful because it directly spoke to a target audience instead of trying to connect with the everyman. In fact, here's an example of a Geek versus Nerd infographic that was released shortly after ours and was intended to connect with a far broader audience of, well, pretty much anyone. Because of its attempt at broad appeal, it lacks any unique qualities that would make it stand out among the crowd. Instead, it pales in comparison to the examples that are custom designed and written for very specific audiences. Great infographics speak to their target audience. This is done through the messaging and the tone of the copy used throughout the infographic, but also the chosen illustration style, the chosen illustration composition, the iconography, the intricacy of the data visualizations, and the ways in which people, if any, are represented in the design. Now, it may seem like common sense to identify why the information in your infographic should resonate with your target audience. But I kid you not, this step is often overlooked. You see, clients often get tunnel vision about their product or service. Most clients are already sold on why their product or service is the best in their eyes. It's because of this that they often have blinders on when considering what value proposition will appeal most to different target audiences. So they're going to need your support to provide an independent point of view. This is why you must first define who your target audience is before you define why the information you're presenting to them matters most. For example, during the 2020 pandemic, one of our clients pivoted their business entirely to create Voodle. Voodle is, in essence, TikTok or Snapchat for the workplace. More specifically, it allows teams to connect over short-form video to quickly discuss projects, strategies, and other intercompany needs. These videos can be categorized and linked to show evolution of a planning discussion, to keep track of a project, and more. This helps avoid the potential misunderstandings that occur when connecting over Slack or Teams, while also avoiding the pitfalls of Zoom fatigue from overcrowded Zoom meetings where the strongest personalities often take over, and those who are quiet don't get the opportunity to easily participate in the conversation at hand. While I just listed off a litany of benefits that Voodle provides, I would need to position those benefits quite differently if presenting to employees who might be trying to solve pain points of not being heard, versus employees who might be looking for more efficiencies in their workflow versus employers who might be looking for better ways to maintain a culture in a remote work environment. By identifying the pain points of your target audience up front, you can start to determine why the information in your infographic will truly resonate with them and matter. This should inform a number of items, including the title of your infographic. For example, if speaking to employers, the title might be "Save Your Team from the Pitfalls of Remote Work." If speaking to employees, the title might be "Working Remote, Stay Connected to Your Coworkers, and Improve Your Workflow in the Process." Okay, those are a little corny, but you get what I mean. Now, this will also inform the information that you share in the infographic. For example, if you're speaking to employers, you may choose to tell a story about Zoom fatigue, loss of efficiencies, increase in team burnout, and the opportunity costs associated with these things, all of which can be solved with Voodle. If you're trying to connect to employees, on the other hand, you might want to share a breakdown of the features in Voodle, along with statistics or use cases about how Voodle will save you time in your workday and improve your relationships with your coworkers. This will also inform the final call to action. Good infographics include a call to action or clear conclusion at the end that often gets the same visual weight as the headline. This helps to bookend the design while also giving your audience a clear next step to act on the information provided. If speaking to employers, the CTA could be "Get your team on Voodle today." If speaking to employees, it might be "Talk to your boss about the benefits of Voodle today." By taking the time to determine your why before you even begin building the content for your infographic, you have a far better chance of creating a succinct narrative that will hook your audience from the headline all the way down to the call to action at the end. Infographics come in many formats. They may be long scrolls sized at roughly 1,000 pixels by 5,000 pixels for a standard blog post. They might be landscape sized at a 16:9 ratio for ease of viewing on a desktop or laptop without having to scroll up and down or left to right. They might be designed for print, taking on the dimensions of whichever physical print format is needed. Or they may be miniaturized, displaying just a few key points for ease of viewing on social media without having to scroll to enlarge or understand. These various formats are determined entirely by one factor: where will your infographic live? It's important to consider where your target audience is and how they're going to be consuming content. For example, maybe you're specifically going after suburban women of the boomer generation. It's likely that you'll find them on Facebook, and it's likely that they access Facebook through larger screens than their mobile phones. It's likely that they're using tablets or laptops or desktops. This means that you can create an infographic that's easy to view on larger screens while still being small enough to fit within a Facebook post without too much information being cut off. For them, I would suggest a landscape infographic. What if your target audience primarily consumes content through their phone, though? A long scroll infographic won't pack the punch that it would on a large screen. Instead, you have to consider what information can be shared on just the phone screen without any scrolling needed or pinching to enlarge. Understanding where your infographic will live will dramatically impact its size and therefore impact the amount of information that you can share within it. This is where you must marry form and function. You need to create a compelling design that best represents your information at hand. This is your form. But you also need to make sure that the content is easy to access and digest wherever it will live online. This is your function. Luckily, a good infographic has the potential to live on a variety of channels by simply breaking it into smaller pieces. Take this long scroll infographic, for example. Long infographics like this see the most success when posted within a blog or a web page or within an online publication. They don't succeed on social media because they're too long and risk pertinent information getting cut off by the viewing window of a post.
What I always suggest the students to do for their presentations is do not exceed one slide plus 3 to 5 bullet points descriptions,
thus deterring people from clicking to view the full version. To get a social audience to view this infographic, we simply need to create smaller micro narratives. A micro narrative is a miniaturized infographic that shows 1 to 3 key points to capture the attention of your audience and encourages them to click through to view the longer form infographic. Now, you may choose to use these to drive social engagement instead of sending visitors to the longer form infographic as well. You can make that decision based on the goals and the intended audience behavior. Your goals and target audience will be the most important indicators of where your infographic will live. But in my next lesson, we're going to talk about the final W, the when, which may also be a factor that drives this important where. So let's dive in, shall we? In this W, we determine, I'm sure you guessed it, when your audience will see the infographic. If you're trying to produce evergreen content, which is content that is always relevant, regardless of the season or year, then this W won't be as important to define. You see, with evergreen content, you simply have to plan your launch of the infographic at a time when it won't get buried by major events that might also be vying for the attention of your audience, whether that be a pressing news story, a holiday shopping rush, a global pandemic. But when your content is not evergreen, the when becomes extremely important. If your infographic is intended to complement a product launch, for example, you have to time your delivery with that launch and consider how that timing impacts your audience. Let's say your audience is millennial parents and your product launch coincides with the start of summer vacation, a time when, in the US at least, parents have to adjust their schedules to ensure that their children aren't left to their own devices during the workday. Now, you might consider waiting a few weeks until parents are comfortable with their new routine and able to give your content the attention it deserves in a situation like this. What if your goal is to grow sales around the holiday season? Well, then you might want to time your infographic for release around Black Friday or Cyber Monday or leading up to them. Or maybe you know that your target audience is at an upcoming conference and you're going to be hosting an exhibit booth there. Well, this not only determines when they're going to see the infographic, but it also determines where it might live. You might choose to create print-ready infographics to hand out, or to make the entire backdrop of your booth one large infographic that captures your audience's attention from multiple exhibit aisles away. Great infographics take a lengthy investment of time to produce.
You consider it this way. Each picture or infographic, namely, will represent some specific message.
You should plan for at least 3 weeks from concept to completion. But if you have a lot of stakeholders, then 6 weeks would be more ideal. When you know your when, you can plan ahead and ensure that you're able to set yourself up for success from the very start. Understanding when audiences will see your infographic will inform the narrative, but it will also inform the design choices that you make. You may choose an illustration style that's trending but not evergreen, simply because you have a short window in which your audience will actually see the infographic. You may choose to illustrate imagery that is iconic of the moment, knowing that the infographic won't be viewed years later with viewers unable to recognize the visual references to the time at hand. It's because of this that knowing your when should not be overlooked, even though it may seem like a minor detail in the long run.
Once again, as this specific lesson is about your final presentation, I would definitely encourage everyone to watch this video as many times as you like. And also, if you haven't tried to form a group for your final research and final presentation, if you scroll your announcement page all the way to the very first week, I posted a link through WhatsApp group that you need to click on it and form your group of 5 to 7 members. Remember, when you form a group, you need to start clearly communicate about the topic of your research. I specifically mentioned the research topic, research report topic. Your final project consists of 2 components, your research project, and then your presentation, which is on that research topic. Read this carefully, form your group. I clearly mentioned the topic for your research. When you open one of these links that I'm trying to open it, and then bear with me. So the topic of your final project is you need to sit with your partners, 5 to 7 members, after you form the group. You need to specifically try to narrow down and select an industry that everybody agrees upon. Either could be work industry that you're working within. If you, for example, work for a Starbucks company, the industry that you're analyzing is coffee industry, and so on. You need to find a problem within that industry. It could be your study industry, the field of your education. Do the research, try to decide around what specific industry you're analyzing within your teammates, find the problem within that industry. To make the gap that you found non-trivial, you should be specific and unique. Therefore, the extensive research is necessary. Then you need to find 2 solutions to that problem. You're not solving anything, you're just proposing solutions. You also need to assign each member with one specific section of your research. One member, for example, is in charge of finding primary stakeholders. The next person within your team will definitely do the research and analyze the secondary stakeholders, and so on and so forth. There must be a budget that is guesstimated. Rough estimation would suffice the matter. The timeline is a specific timeline on how long does it take for this specific research to be completed. Basically, you're proposing 2 solutions to this problem within your industry. The limitation is referring to the problems that you encounter while you're doing the research. Either you go through the libraries, or you have limited access to data through different websites and so on. The scope of the project is how large is this gap or issue. You need to address the methodology as well. Methodology is elaborating on how you did your research, through what specific channels. You should not forget to address the conclusion. Read the topic. I also posted one more link when you click on your announcement. The second link is the template. This specific template is for you to complete individually. Each individual member within your team should complete this. You don't need to submit anything anywhere. You supposedly need to complete this for your references. You need to write down the group members, names, full names and last name, first and last. Group number, like how many people, 5, 6, or 7. Do not exceed 7 members and don't go below 5 members, because this research topic and the presentation can be done within 5 to 7 members. You specifically need to work on the project title, which should not exceed 20 words. The project objectives should be somewhat minimum 2 to 3 objectives that you address, and you do not exceed, which is a short paragraph, you do not exceed 200 words. The main issue or the gap that we discuss is a problem should be explained in a short paragraph, not longer than 200 words. The research methodology should be elaborated. You need to talk about the primary and the secondary research. In this case, because university students are considered as the primary researchers, you as college students are considered as the secondary researchers. Basically, you are doing the research, analyzing the researches that are already done. To make your analysis unique and non-trivial, you need to find the problem within the problem and analyze, finding 2 solutions within the solutions. You're not solving anything, you're just analyzing and doing the research. You also need to provide the details of the specific sources. So keep track of any document that you get your hands on through the analysis. And the expected outcome, which is you need to summarize what do you expect to achieve, to attain while you're doing this mini research, I would say. What questions your research will answer, what personal development you hope to achieve. So these 2 important documents that I posted on your announcement page should be reviewed. And this week specifically, you do not need to attend the class once again. You can review this recorded video as many times as you like, and I will post this recorded video on the document and lecture folder. I will date it as June 13th, which is today. And you also need to review these assigned reading passages. You know where to find me. If you have any further questions, I'd be happy to assist you via email. You can find my email by clicking on faculty contact information, and you specifically see my email address in here. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll meet with you next week.